Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. This is going to be part 1 on how to make a 2-player console-based tic-tac-toe game in Python. So I'm going to run the program and show you what we're going to be doing at the end. What's the final product. I'm going to run, and there you go. It's just a simple print statement, welcome to tic-tac-toe, and it prints out a board, and it also prints out whose turn is it. So you might be asking, how am I going to place X on this board? So this kind of board, I kind of structured it after the number pad on your keyboard. So for example, you can see my mouse cursor. So for example, 1 is here, 2 is here, 3 is here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So it makes it very simple to place X or O. So I'm going to place X. I'm going to do number 1, which is going to be here. So I'm going to go 1 and enter. So there you go. It puts X in spot number 1. So now it's O's turn. So I'm going to put it in spot number 5, so which is the center. 5. And there you go. It puts O in the center. So I'm just going to try to win. So I'm going to put X at number 2, and I'm going to put O at say 7. And I'm going to put X again at 3, and watch what happens. There you go. I won the game. And it just prints a simple kind of end game, and it asks me whether I can replay the game. So whether I want to replay the game. So I'm going to put yes, and there you go. It prints out a score. So since X won, X, so there's 1 here. So 1 for X, 0 for O, and it repeats the game. So I'm going to close this and stop the program. Okay, let's get started. So first I'm going to go to File and create new project. I'm going to name it Tic Tac Toe, and I'm gonna create, and I'm gonna say new window. So first, as usual, I'm gonna create a standard file, a standard Python file. I'm just gonna name it main as usual. There you go. So first, I want to create a dictionary, a Python dictionary, so that I can store all values from 1 to 9. So if you don't know what a Python dictionary is, it's better if I put it in this way. So you have your standard kind of dictionary where you kind of search up the meanings of certain words. So a Python dictionary is pretty similar. So you have values, or you have like words, or like so values as it called, and then you're going to assign something to that value. So let's say for example I put 1, and I'm going to put, let's say, a string, say hi. So 1, the definition of 1 means hi. So it's pretty simple in that sense to understand. So first I'm going to write the board. I'm going to equals. So, and I'm going to put those kind of squiggly braces. And so for the first value, because it's structured after the kind of number board, the number pad on your keyboard, so 1 to 9, I'm going to first put 7. So what is 7? So the value of 7 I'm going to assign is just some parentheses, quotations. So it's going to be empty. So because later on we want to assign X or O to this certain value, and it also makes it easier to clear the board afterwards, which will be in part 2. So I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly write all of this, and I'll show you later on the end product of the board. And there you go. So I've labeled each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to this open and close quotations. So which means, for example, 1 has a value of nothing, but it's a string. So because I put these quotation marks, so later on it'll be easy to assign X and O to it. So next what I'm going to do is just some simple variables. But before I do that, let's just it's always good practice to put comments in code, so that later on when you revisit the code later on, let's say 1 year from now, you'll be, oh, okay, this does what, so I can remember easily what this part of code is gonna do. So I'm just gonna say this. So to put like your standard syntax for comments, you put this hashtag mark, and I'm gonna say board values. There we go. So I'm gonna move on now. So next I'm gonna just put some simple variables to keep track of the score and the count. So as in count, I'll explain later on. I'm going to put var. And so first, we need to kind of have a count or like a tracker for, because like in Tic Tac Toe you can either win, lose, or have a draw. So the reason why I put count because I structured the code in such a way is that every time a successful kind of placement happens, so let's say X is successfully able to put on a certain spot, or O, so it adds it to the counter. So the moment it reaches 9, okay, so there's only 9 places on the board, and if it's 9 successful times, which means, and there's no other kind of requirements, or like kind of nobody has won, which means it's 9, so the board has already filled up. So and then I can call for some kind of code that says, oh, you guys both have lost, it's a draw. So I'm just going to say count equals 0, and I'm going to also set the score for later on. So I'm going to say x equals 0 and O equals 0. So now I'm going to put some simple print statements. So I'm going to say print welcome to Tic Tac Toe. So next, I'm going to create a function, print the board. So as you saw earlier, so I'm going to call it define print board. So now in this kind of function, I'm going to need to pass in something. I'm going to need to have some kind of parameter, because if not, how am I going to print the board? So okay, so it's better if I show it to you. So I'm going to pass in, I'm going to call it board, okay, just a name. Okay, so the way I'm going to print the board is like this. So for example, I'm going to put print, I'm going to put the quotation marks, and then plus board 7. So you might be guessing at this point already, oh, so that means I'm going to use the variable the board later on to pass in. Yes, you're correct. So perhaps later when I say print board, and what I'm going to pass in here is the board. So instead of having to repeat every time the board, I can just pass in just pass in the board here, and I don't have to write the code many times again over and over. So it's practically simplifies my job. So I'm just gonna finish this up, and I think it's best I go and copy and paste it, because it's all the same except for the values in the board. So, and when I'm done, I'll come back. Okay, I'm back, and I've already pasted in the board. So I realized there is a bit of a error. I made a bit of a mistake. Because if I don't do this, then the board will look a bit weird. So I need to put a space in every of these values in the dictionary, the board. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, there we go. And now I'm gonna run the program so that you guys get an understanding of so far what we've done. So I'm gonna run main. And there you go. It prints the board. There we go. So let's say now I were to introduce like say something in in these quotations. Let's say I put the value of x, for example, in number 7. So what will happen if I do this? So I'm gonna run. And there you go. At spot number 7, there is x. The reason why there is because we're passing, you know how you from earlier I put in the board, right? As then I pass in, as it takes a parameter board. So, and then you see here that it's board. So it's practically just means taking the board value of number 7, and as you see here, number 7 means x. And there we go. Number 7 placing x. So I'm gonna just delete this, put back the space, and I'm gonna save it. So for next up, I'm going to be working on the kind of placement of both x and o. So I'm going to first remove this print board and save it again. So I'm going to do this in functions so that if the user kind of puts in something other than the value of 1 to 9, I can repeat the function again. So it's good for, you know, if you accidentally made a mistake. So I'm going to put define, I'm going to call it x move. So first, I want to kind of get the variable of count, because for every successful move that I'm able to make, I want to add to that so that I can tell later on if we have hit a draw. So to access count, so let's say if I just go here and say count equals 0, you can see there's like kind of a squiggly line underneath and an error. So because of that, because count right here is a local variable, so which means I cannot access it in other functions. So you might be asking, hey, then why don't you just put count inside of here? Of course I could, but I don't think that will work. So instead, I'm gonna use this code, this kind of code to make it. It's called global. So like you kind of like allows to access count basically. So I'm gonna just put global. There we go, and there we go. The red underlined squiggly lines have kind of disappeared, and I'm gonna remove this as well because I can't do global count equals 0 because I'm just setting count to a global variable, which means I can access it. So next I want to print the board, so I'm gonna just put in print board, and I'm gonna pass in the parameter the board. So next I want to get user input. So first I'm gonna say move equals int, because 1 to 9 we don't want a string or a bool, so that's why we put int. That means it's only accepting numbers, not floats either, which means whole numbers like 1 2, not 1.5 2.5. So I'm gonna put int. I'm gonna say input and some kind of statement. It is expert. I'm gonna say move to which place. I'm gonna put a bracket and say 1 to 9, and then I'm going to put a closing bracket and colon. And next I want to check the variable of move. Oh, and as you can see, yeah, I made a mistake. I made a typo, so it's input. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to check what is the variable of move now. So the way I'm going to do that is going to say if the board, I'm going to pass in the value of move. For example, if I put 1, so it's going to check the board number 1. So number 1 means this, the first value. So I'm going to check if it equals to nothing inside. That means it's empty, which means nobody has placed anything there yet. And I want to check if move is greater than 0 but less than 10. So which means only 1 to 9. So first what I want to do now inside this, it's a count plus equals 1, which means the move is successful. Next, I want to do O move. So it's basically also going to be something like X move, but it's meant for O to move. So for now, I'm just going to put like a comment, say O underscore move. And for later on in part 2, we'll also need to check the board. So I'm going to put a comment here, and I'm going to write check board, which will be the function later on we're going to be using in part 2 to check the board, to check if there's any winning moves. Now next, I want to check if the board, the placement is already been filled up. So I'm going to say elif the board, I'm going to pass in move is equal or does not equal to an empty kind of quotation with a space inside. Then I want to say print place already taken, pick another. And that's the good thing about using a function, because now I can just call in X move again. so that the function is repeated and it will print again the board and so on. Now I want to check if the move is greater than 1 or 9. Less than 1 but greater than 9. I'm going to say elif the move is less than or equal to 0, or move is greater than 9. Then I'm just gonna do x move again, and also print please select a number between 1 and 9. And finally, so let's say I don't enter something, I don't enter an int, so I enter, let's say, the letter I, so or something else other than 1 to 9, so I'm just put else. I'm gonna put print please enter a correct input, and I'm gonna do x move again. So now what I want to do is practically do the same thing for O. So I'm going to copy and paste this and change everything. And before that, I realized I made a mistake. I forgot to set the board to the specific to X or O. So I'm gonna, back in the X move function, I'm gonna put the board move is equal to X. And that's about it. So I'm also gonna copy and paste this in the O function. So I'm gonna copy and paste here, and instead of X, I'm gonna put O. So I'm just really quickly gonna change all of this, and yeah. And I've changed everything. So now what I want to do is create a while loop, or like, so that the code can keep on running infinitely until I call for a stop. So it's gonna say while true. So true is always true. So this is gonna run as long as true remains true. Or it's better if I, let's say, put a variable, let's say run equals true, and I'm gonna put here raw run. So that's kind of better to understand. But of course, since that's not how I'm gonna quit the program by just saying run equals false. I'm just gonna say while true. You'll see later on why in part 2. So I'm gonna put while true. I'm gonna put if count equals to 0. Then I'm gonna say x move, which means x is gonna start first. And I'll also check if count equals to 9, which means it'll be a draw. So I'm gonna put a comment here, because in part 2 we'll create the clear board function. So I'm gonna say clear board. So that means the entire board will be set back to nothing again. So I'm gonna print also draw. And I'm going to also, because later on we have a replay function as well, so I can play the game again, replay, and set count back to 0. And one more thing too, we also yeah, that's about it. And there's an error. Let's see, line 65. Oh yes, I didn't put an indent, so I'm just gonna select all of this and tab. And now I'm gonna save this. And one more thing as well, in the both X and O functions, X move and O move, we also have to, I'm gonna get rid of this now, so that I can, so that later on we can, so like after the successful move has been made on X, then we're gonna do O move, the function O move. So I'm gonna do the same down here, but I'm just gonna call X move this time. There we go. So if I run this, the only thing that will happen is that I'm able to kind of input all of this, but there will be no kind of ending it because I cannot check yet for a winning or losing statement. That will be later in part 2. So I'm going to run the program. So welcome to Tic Tac Toe. I'm going to put, and it's X turn. I'm going to place it number 1 and number 1. You can see X, and I'm going to place it for O. So I'm going to say 2. And there you go. It works. It's not running the program. And yeah, this is about it for part 1 of on how to make a 2-player console-based tic-tac-toe game in Python. I hope you guys kind of learned something about this about so far. And the code today you will see in both part 1 and part 2. I will put a link in this description to my GitHub page where you can copy and where you can kind of get the project files and everything. And that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to check out my other videos as well. And until next time, cheers!